Resampling today. Um, my cable for my bass is kind of fucking up, so we're gonna have to do that again another point, but it's all good. I got a bunch of bass resamples that we're gonna be kind of going through for just like lo-fi sampling and stuff. Especially for lo-fi, just in general, depending on type of beat that you're trying to do. Really cool to get some live bass in there. Not always just regular bass either. Like you can get like kind of any style of bass as long as you just isolate it out of the track. Yeah, so we'll kind of be doing some of that as well. Okay, so I'm sure you've copped this as well. This is going to be a shorter guide just because now we're going to be kind of inside of Ableton more instead of just like lecturing and all that shit. So we're going to be jumping into Polygon, Granulator, Iris, and also Sampler a bunch. And then we're also going to be using some synths and resampling some sounds, kind of like the way I do it for, yeah, I could totally do some Primus licks for sure. Do some Jerry the Race Car Driver. But yeah, so we'll be kind of like pretty much in Ableton most of the time. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of like a intro to what we're going to be talking about and what the class is going to be about. Again, kind of the same thing as Synth 110, so it's going to be alongside the same concepts. So I want all the weeks to just kind of like be bass, chords, you know, everything in order. So we're talking about one thing all week, pretty much. Alright, so I also included a little like abstract from this Isotope article about granular synthesis, just in case you need a refresher about how to warp audio or what stuff means. Because we're going to be talking about it again as well, but there's definitely some, you know, basic kind of language when talking about a granular synthesizer or sampler, however. And then we're also going to be talking about MIDI effects and how to kind of like maximize your performance and all that stuff. I know a lot of people are kind of stoked on my sound design sessions and stuff, and this is kind of like the whole backbone of it, really. All this stuff is the backbone of it, and resampling really kind of makes all of that possible for me to actually sit down and make an hour of basses. You know, it's not something that I would like to be assigned to do. You know, if somebody told me, hey, I need an hour of basses, it'd probably take me more than an hour to get that right. But if I just sit down and do my thing, then it's easy. No problem. So definitely kind of read through this. We're going to be kind of talking about some stuff like this. Also, if you're in FL Studio, Granulizer, do a lot of stuff with that. Warping, all that stuff. Also vocodecs and a bunch of other really, really weird stuff. So for the agenda today, we're going to be talking about FM sampling, 808s, subs as well. Lo-fi bass sampling, isolation, which is like phase cancellation stuff. And then transformative sampling, and then bass effects. So transformative, that's a little bit more like sample and hold and other things utilizing a sample but then just destroying the shit out of it. Thanks for the follow. Okay, so that's kind of going to be the agenda for today. Read through this if you want to go and check out something about sampling stuff. Sample and hold, if you're curious about that, is very, very complex on a lot of the info about sample and hold specifically. So I kind of gave a summed up definition. You know, really, really simple. You know, it's just a small loop that loops on pretty much a wave and kind of like a wavetable. Okay, so I have a little session here with a bass I put together. Just like a little basic sound design session. Also for the samples, I have like a bunch of respaces that I give out every now and then. And these I use in a lot of stuff. It's not like a sample that I wouldn't use, you know, because it's kind of the stuff that I feel like it's, oh, my bad, trying to put space and type something. Alright, so those will be in the pack. You can definitely mess with those, do whatever you want. As you can see, I've used it a bunch of times, copies it every time I put in a new session. So these are good samples to kind of work from. And I'll probably be working with this and a bunch of different stuff. So I'm going to drag a couple of these in here. Essentially though, what I'm doing on this, and just for this resample, as you can see it's like kind of spaced out, I did separate it into like a 4-bar loop. And then that 4-bar loop I, you know, put in some MIDI and then just, you know, automated stuff. And then while it's automated, I have it on loop and now I'm tweaking parameters. Hell yeah. Yeah, definitely use the samples in whatever you want. I don't really care. Hence why I'm giving them out. Once I give something out for free, I just kind of let go of it, so I'm not going to hunt you down or anything like that. But yeah, so I have a bunch of different effects on here. So it's kind of like a FM8 patch, I believe, that I go and automate vocoder to kind of make it really wet and squiggly. And this is just like, again, back to like bass sound design stuff. So kind of like what we were talking about yesterday, I guess, with like sound design and a couple other things. This kind of goes with that. Alright, so that's a good question, ISound. Do I use these for my main bass or fills? And that definitely is per case basis. I've used these as fills and I've used them as the main bass in a lot of different tracks. So yeah, it's really intense because there's a lot of automation going on. And I have like a reverb that comes in as well, and I'm automating the format of the vocoder. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So what I did, because I wanted to talk about stuff like that, just because it's a really complex sample that I made, I kind of rebuilt that patch. I definitely do not have this session anymore, so I know how this bass is made because I've made it so many different times. So, you know, really what you're looking for, and this is about MIDI effects now, we're talking about, you know, all this stuff here. We got portamento effects, you know, way to glide notes to different notes and to make them kind of like bend into each other, utilizing legato effects and portamento. And that goes along with this MIDI overlap thing I wrote here. So this is like, if you want to glide from a certain note, you can use portamento to glide every single time. So velocity effects, we're going to be using this in samplers specifically. So what I'm using in this patch is mostly mod wheel and pitch bend. Pitch blend, if re-spelled that. But yeah, so it's really simple. So let's check out this patch and let's hear it. So I usually do this in like 2 different takes. Hence why I assigned the homework to record a 4-bar bass loop. It can have a beat if you want. I have a little beat that I set up. It's just a little 4-bar drum loop with some shakers. Alright, so I like to vibe out to something that's, again, part of my workflow. So if you're like, how do I get inspired? Well, you gotta kind of inspire yourself. And that's kind of like my workflow with it. So what I like to do first is like a solo sound design session where there's no beat, and maybe I'm just kind of dragging around this patch and all that stuff. So this patch is kind of like a, and I don't know if you notice my skin, it's OTT. But yeah, this patch is a growl bass, kind of like a mixture of a growl and like a respace. Check out these notes. puts a little OTT skin over the key. Sick. Alright, so it's pretty intense. So let's hear the patch before my processing. I'm blasting it up into some erosion, vocoding it so it's really squiggly, spraying out the image, giving it a little erosion, saturating, OTT, limiter. So really, really simple. And I have a Uber mod at the end just in case I want that while I'm resampling. And then I'll probably put a reverb on here too. Actually forgot to do that. My magic mouse is not being so magic today. Okay, so I'll bring that in when I need it. And also I kind of like it at the end of the chain and this kind of stuff just because I'm really crunching the story and the shit out of this. So yeah, let's hear this without any processing. With processing. Big tings. Alright, so again, blasting up and milking all the good stuff out of this sound and then blasting into the vocoder. I really like the way the vocoder kind of like shapes the mid and low end. I also like to pull back the release all the way so it's really, really smooth. Can also, you know, change the amplitude going on the way into the vocoder. Okay, so I'm not going to do this with a beat right now, and we're just going to kind of like keep it moving here. So again, you can do this with any patch, and I can, you know, kind of like load a new patch in here. You can just try out some shit as well. But let's take one take here. So I'm going to show you kind of like what I do here. I have a keyboard set up, and I have pitch bend mapped to a few things. So I pitch bend mapped to the LFO rate. I have it mapped to filter cutoff. Those are both bipolar modulation, so when the pitch bend's not being used, it goes back to the original position. And then I have mod wheel. Well, actually, I had it modulating a couple things, but then I took it off. So I'm probably going to add that back onto. We'll do FM here. So modulate oscillator B warp, and we'll do that because it's a mod wheel. Now this is a 0 to 100% value. We'll do it unipolar. Alright, so again I took it off BPM mode because when I go and slide it around and do a bunch of weird stuff with it, I want it to actually be smooth and not snap to the different values. I can add more triplet values and dotted values to it, but it will kind of like overlap as well and still snap. I'm going to turn on these Valhallas now, just so I can go and do some stuff. And thank you for the follow, by the way. Alright, so I have one track set to resampling, and also I have limiting on here, so I'm not going to be clipping. I also have limiting on my master too, so resampling is going to take the master output, hence why I'm soloed. So you need to be soloed when you're doing this in Ableton, or if you're doing it in any other DAW that has this type of routing. Alright, so I'm just going to hit record and then we're going to start resampling. Okay, so take one. So that's kind of like essentially what you should be doing. You should build a patch to the point where you think it's good and usable for you. Like this patch, I would use just straight up by itself without it being resampled. You know, that's how thick it is right now. And I also like to have sub when I do this inside the patch, just so I have more frequency content to work with. So really, if you're just walking in, the OTT skin is very clutch, part of the vibe. But yeah, so you know it's kind of like the workflow when resampling a bass is get it to a good point. You know, like say if you build one sound that's like this and you're like, yeah, this is dope, I want to do it a bunch of times over again, then save the instrument rack so you have all your processing, all that stuff. Definitely crucial to this patch as well. So the serum patch will not sound as good without this processing chain. Let's call it 000 because I don't know. All right, so now that you do that, you know, I like to go and organize it immediately. So if I'm gonna go and like keep this in my library and keep it organized at all, it's gotta be put into something. So yeah, just name it something that kind of gives it quality. You can go and name the track you recorded onto as well, and then give it the name. Say if you're in FL Studio, Logic, other things like that, you don't have the same type of file structure that Ableton has. So what I do usually, so I just delete this. We have the audio here, and then I just go into my resample library, and then just drag and drop. Oops, not like that. Well, already there. But really what I want it to do is just drag into the entire thing like this, and then click back in here, and it saves all the samples into a new folder. It's technically a new session just with this one track. And then I can go and just source the audio right here, but it's all organized and I know that all these are different sessions that I've done like this. Okay, so you know, there's a ton of different ways to go about doing this stuff. Really what you want to do is like utilize stuff that you like and then play, move knobs, twist stuff. Essentially though, you want you know, a couple things to be controlled for you. And that's like the main character of the sound, which is in this is going to be the pitch, the speed of the LFO. So I'm controlling all that stuff with pitch bend and then adding more FM with my mod wheel. So that goes into all this processing and adds like a slight character change. So I can also add stuff like wavetable modulation, also even change this basic waveform here in order to actually change this sound a lot. Really what's the cool thing though is that when you're going to resampling this stuff like this, you know, kind of have the ability to go and change your pitch, change speed, change the notes that you're playing, also even change like the vibe really quick in terms of like progression, even key. So you're not really constrained to working with the finite little section of notes. So that's really the cool thing is like not really having to touch the synth that much. So when I'm, you know, out of, you know, just doing things with the mod wheel and pitch bend and stuff, I could definitely hook up my APC40 here and then add some knobs into that, twist a bunch of stuff, maybe bend, and more stuff with the filtering. This patch is super, super basic. I didn't even realize that this was here. This is the compressor. It goes into a brownie face. That's so funny. Oh my god. Thank you for the sub. Or for the gifted sub, Finland. You're a good man. Alright, so yeah, I also like to save new patches whenever I go and like, you know, change stuff a little bit, you know, so I have something to go back to. And then also just audition different patches. Like if you have a big patch library, then you can definitely, you know, try out a bunch of different shit. Like I like kind of more harmonic sounds as well. So this one's kind of like a harmonic respace. Let's just see how it sounds through the processing chain without even doing anything to it. It's also that's good stuff. So on this patch, I'm actually utilizing the global detune and then harmonizing this in a minor third and a, and then the sub is way down low. So this is like actually works. You know, I can go and sample another version of this. Maybe with this one, I'm going to use the beat as well. So I'm actually going to patch this into the track now. So now with the beat, now it gives me kind of a structure, it locks it to a tempo, could even lock it to a key if I just keep jamming on one note specifically. But really the big thing is the key. So like, or I'm sorry, the tempo. So like if I record it at 87, 90, kind of puts it in, you know, a very specific halftime vibe. But you know, it's all whatever you're able to kind of like just have fun and kind of jam on, really. Let's try some stuff out. Okay, so before I go any more into that, so I got the recording, and I want this to stop now. Stop, please. All right, just some things in Ableton, you know. All right, so I got a couple good things to work with. You know, kind of playing around one key, around F, around there, but got a couple good kind of like sounds to kind of like piece and choose together and one is kind of rhythmic, playing with the beat. Okay, so now that we got the resampling section out of the way, now we can start kind of messing with this with samplers. And we can do this with, you know, whatever we want. We don't want to do that. That was an audio track. So I'm going to move this over here. We're going to load up a couple more samplers here. So granulator, that's a really, really good one to kind of like go to for pretty much any resample. And this is still in the resample like kind of family here, because granulator is very hard to go and make melodic. Also, it is kind of a pain in the ass to automate and keep in control the whole time. So personally for me, I kind of compartmentalize granulator to sound design sessions. But if I'm going to use it as a form is also really good. Form is a new synth, or a newish synth from Native Instruments, and it's kind of along that line. What you're going to find with a lot of stuff, once you get really deep into granulator, or not granulator, granular synthesis in general, is that a lot of it, if not all of it, sounds very, very similar. When you have, you know, different algorithms, you know, calculating like complex or complex pro stuff like that, like formants, like recreating the format of a waveform, you can have different levels of quality there for sure. But when it comes to just like straight up chopping stuff into grains, that's something that can be done with that terrible system. In fact, it's something that happens when there's degradation in the system itself. So it could be desirable, you know, so there's a lot of different ways with it. Okay, so granulator is kind of a sample and hold engine. So it kind of sample and holds on little spots in this readout here. And we already kind of like checked out how this entire thing works. So we're going to use it as a bass, mono voice. Find the amp envelope over here if you don't want any of that tail. Back off the attack for less click. A little less click. So this is really cool when you're just kind of like what I was doing here, just kind of sampling into just one track, and we'll actually kind of do that again here and just capture some more stuff. So, you know, this is what you should start, if not already doing, just integrate it into your workflow. Start separating your sound design sessions from your production sessions, especially for basses. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of like play some random notes. So I'm making like lower pitch textures, randomizing this sound over here. Also going to modulate this a little bit more. Also keep in mind, this is a synth that's based around C3. So the original pitch is going to be around C3. That's cool. So what I was doing here was I was modulating the grain size. So we can do this exact same sound with a regular sampler. And this is something I already talked about with granulator as well, is that it's kind of a granular sampler. But what it's really good at is making randomized loop points. So it's kind of taking little snapshots of the grain. But then you can modulate grain size with an LFO, which I was doing. Also position with an LFO, which scrubs through the grain. And then it goes and changes that window size. So it's optimized for sample and hold. That's why it sounds very granular. But if it was granular, you would see some type of algorithm that's calculating this stuff for it. And there's none of that happening here. What it does have is like a live sample grabber, so you can go and sample stuff live and then go and drop it in here. But that's why granulator is super cool, because it granulates stuff. It chops it into little grains, but those grains are actually small little loops. There's actually no way to unlink pitch and time here. Hence why it kind of sounds degraded when I play it up and down different levels or different pitches here. Yeah, everybody, please hydrate. Thank you. So it's really cool when you go and just scrub. You can just click and drag and scrub. Yeah, so satisfying. But yeah, so, you know, it's definitely going to be scaling based off of your source material. So you can try anything in here. We can even try this older baby Reese. Let's drag it in here. Essentially, it's going to give you the same product with any different source material. It's being a little bit difficult right now. No problem. No problem at all. Let's go and do this. Just in case it's being a little bit weird. Looks like it was being a little weird. These are definitely waves. So again, same kind of timbre here. It's going to loop on one point. We can scrub to that file position. So if you really want to make this usable, I recommend taking off the release entirely. Again, making it one voice. Try to process this as much as possible. So that means saturation, compression, anything you feel like makes it sound better to you. You know, we're going to talk about a lot more effects and processing stuff. That's why I did this whole session with processing this bass separate from this, because I know that will take up a lot of time here. But essentially, you should be kind of just able to drop these samples into something else and then get, you know, 50,000 new samples from your 50,000 samples already. So that's kind of like the point of all this, especially with resampling. It's that you can go and apply this to pretty much any source material that you decide to go and drop in here. So it's kind of a never-ending process. Like if you're ever just literally uninspired, like you can just go straight to this and then get a bunch of new ideas. Let's play this with a beat, hear how it sounds. So obviously a ton of shit to do here. You jam along with something, do whatever, twist knobs. This one's a lot easier to twist knobs in because there's less stuff to do. So remember that this is going to be loop size, so grain works inversely, so slow hertz, 0.25 equals large loop. Fast, 150, it means 150 cycles per second on the loop. It's going to randomize where that start position is. It's going to scrub the start position. Oh, that's too good. Alright, so yeah, I really love that shit. Definitely a lot of useful stuff I just showed you if you're new to this style of sampling. So now let's take this into sampler. So now this is going to be the little bit more accessible version of what I just did. Let's actually get a different sample here. Okay, so we're in Simpler now. I can do this in Simpler as well. So let's first do it in Simpler. We can even move into Iris and do some stuff in there. So I kind of want to just talk about like the crazy heavy stuff like right now, just all in one section, and we're going to talk about some of the other more lo-fi stuff in a little bit. Alright, so first thing I like to take off, just so I know where the volume of the sample is velocity to volume. Then I regulate that with, you know, my volume there. Make sure I'm playing kind of C3. There it is. Alright, so if I want to sample and hold on this, I have a bunch of different waveforms to choose from. So all these little guys in here, the discrepancy that we're seeing right here is offset between left and right channel because there's a little bit of space I put on there. It's going to kind of look like that. Alright, so now I can go in here, change my start position, and then change my loop amount, length. Also, if you wanted to not snap to the zero crossings, take off snap mode. Alright, so obviously that's almost exactly the same sound from Granulator. So exactly what I was just talking about. This is sample and hold. So we can sample and hold on individual grains or waves. This loop is a grain because it's taking a snapshot of a small little finite window. Hence why I included that little article about Granulator. So, well, it's literally like there's a bunch of stuff about Granulator in there and just granular synthesis in general. So I really like this way of doing stuff. When I'm implementing sounds with just like straight up audio, it becomes a little bit different. So with that, like texture or tones, I'm kind of like looking for just pitch around effects and stuff like that. Because the complex and complex pro algorithms, sometimes take up so much processing it chokes your entire system when it hits that one sample, and B, it does not sound as good. So yeah, I bet it kind of sounds like some Cursor. This stuff I actually learned probably around 2012, and I think I talked about this from like a Culprit masterclass video, and he kind of talked about cone sounding stuff like this, and a bunch of other people, and they all learned from Rezo. So Rezo is king. All hail Rezo. So yeah, there's also a couple other ways we can do this as well. So let me show you one really quick way that's kind of weird. Let's get a kick. So say if I assigned you some homework and said, hey, make a bass line out of a kick. and try to make it as non-distorted as possible. Try to find something that's non-distorted kick waveform. So this is how you can kind of do that, and this is now sample and hold again. So I'm going to shift around the start point to find kind of like a zero crossing. That's kind of the zero crossing there. We can also try snapping. Snap is going to also snap the endpoints. That's not something you really want to do if you're doing something like this. You're going to just have to load up a tuner. So this is really like the next step. So lengthwise, I want to find one cycle here. Hold down shift to do fine amounts. Shift the start point just a little bit. So I want this yellow line to end right at this center line. That's kind of what I'm looking for here. So length around the same thing. All right, cool. Let's try playing it. All right, so it's not changing pitch. And why? Because it's not in tape sampler mode. So we need it to not be granulator, or keep on saying granulator. Not be granulized. No algorithm in there, so it pitches around. All right, so you hear that buzz. That's because of the offset of the phase. So what we can do now is add a fade. All right, so we're fading the zero crossings to kind of shave off that extra harmonic. And the more fade we add, the less buzz there will be. Yeah, everybody do your homework to what Ori was saying there. All right, so I've made a sub out of this kick. And I do this sometimes when I'm looking for random waveforms to kind of like work with. Because I don't just use, you know, all these crazy basses. Sometimes I'm looking for an analog waveform. So when you're working with sample and hold, when something's not unlinked with pitch and time, meaning in a granular mode, it'll literally change speed based on what pitch you're playing. It can go polyphonic, so I can play multiple notes. And then I can tune it. So if it's a B flat minus 6 cents, then I need to tune it up 2 semitones. I want C to equal C. And then up right about there. Close enough. I just, you know, 0.2 is close. So that'll actually even sound a little bit more detuned and a little bit more real. So sometimes I'll go and add like a vibrato effect, just slightly offset the pitch. Alright, so if we look at this in a spectrum and just see what we're working with in terms of harmonics now. Now that I'm kind of like generating a sub just with a straight up waveform, let's kind of like look at it. So I have a ton of harmonics in here. Kind of like, we can even check what harmonics we're working with. So I'm playing a C, so first harmonic after should be an octave up. Alright, yeah, so it's kind of like a really soft sawtooth. So right now, even with the detune as well, and the modulated detune, this is kind of like a Moog sub. It has the same kind of like harmonic characteristic of a Moog sub. So now I'm using this kick sine wave. Like just literally like the part of the kick that looked like a sine wave, I just wanted that waveform. And just kind of like separated right to that. Cut a grain on a waveform. Reading some questions now. Anybody have any specific questions? Or is everybody just lamenting about Ableton? Kind of seems like a lament hour. Expect to see some poems. Okay, so that's a really useful tip, because now once I tune this, I know that the center pitch is around B flat. I've sample and hold around a waveform that I've tuned. Now I can go and turn this into a sampler, and this is one of the key points in here that we're going to talk about today. It's the FM sampling and 808 subs, all that stuff. So we're going to be kind of working with this for that stuff. So let's see if it's still in tune when I convert it. Yes. Cool. So that doesn't mean it's in perfect pitch though, because I'm transposing. I'm not setting the root note to B flat minus 6 cents. So we want to reset this now, because simpler does not have a root note. Okay, so we want the center pitch to be B flat, so that's A sharp. Okay, so I'm gonna play a C, and then I set the root note to C just so it's back to 0, so we can see how it's offset. So I'm playing C and it's reading out B flat. I shift this down to an A sharp, which is B flat, and now it gives me C. So now it's in tune. What does this mean? This means that my FM oscillator is now going to be in tune with my sample too. Alright, so now we're making dots. Alright, so, if I assigned you some homework saying, hey, make this kick into a donk, and it cannot sound like a kick at all, that would be the assignment. So we can add any other waveform in here and then try that out. Again, remember how sawtooths work. They work like a sync oscillator, so they will multiply the fundamental. So just as harmonic as any other FM synth, but now I'm working with a sampled sine wave. Then I can go in here, say if I wanted to wobble into my FM sound here. So now I have a semi-modular LFO. I can go route into the volume of the oscillator. Alright, so that gets pretty interesting, especially if you're going to go and apply this to anything else. I gave you the most basic ways to apply this, pretty much, which is isolate on a basic waveform and then go and tune it to the root note of that basic waveform you isolate. Because this has a actual loop size. The loop size is going to have a cycle per second, and that cycle per second is 0.05 to 0.07, so about 20 milliseconds. So we equate that into frequency, that's about F-ish. But, C to B flat, that's what we're getting. Alright, so say if I wanted to turn this into an 808 now. So now I have release, I have it set to monophonic, that's where the mono's going to live. So I want to be able to hit it, boom. Cool. So now I'm 808ing. So I'm going to add a pitch envelope so I get a little bit of punch to it. Then let's add in the beat. Make sure we're highlighted on that beat too. Also run it through some hard clipping, but I'm also going to run it into the filter, so it should be already running into the filter like this. So pretty much what I did was I created a baby from this kick. This kick had a baby. One piece of this kick is now a new kick. This kick has been reborn. Alright, so this is cool because we can go and also add FM to this sound now. So the FM in here is going to give us a lot more character to this 808 sound. So you can add kind of like odd harmonics and make it kind of like a donkish 808. When you talk about 808s with donks, you're talking about like the car donks, like giant rims on a, Cadillac. So we want a little bit less, actually a lot less. So we're gonna pull this down. I want to make it quicker too. So we're gonna go like around here. Alright, so all that wobble now and breakup is coming from the FM that I'm putting into it. Alright, so what I do to this after would be to trashify it just a bit. So the low end has a ton of distortion to it, so we're going to do multiband here. We're going to capture some of the upper order harmonics. Now I'm going to distort those, we're going to clip them. So push the phase back to 0 here. And just hard clip it off, then we can compress it. And let's mix it in, and then low pass it a bit. So we got to turn the filter on, mix it in. So we're going to keep it clipped here, but I'm going to add in some sighting compression just to add another tone. So we're going to add it in right here, right in the center of the waveform so it has a place to live. Sounds beefy. Alright, and then I'm going to get a little bit of high resolution in here, so we can either add erosion, or I can go add some like really crushed breakup on here. Let's do fuzz, and then we'll do acid. We just want to mix that in as well. That's straight up giving me a kick. A little too kicky. We're going for an FM sub. I'm going to pull this back, and then I'm also going to pull back the decay so it has less of a mid-range tone. So I want this to actually fit in with my kick. I don't want it to like take up the space of my kick. Okay. doing the same thing to the mids, and then I'm also going to pull this back just a little bit more. Alright. A lot of cool sounds to be made from this kick. Bro, send me that kick. Fucking cheating having that. Okay, so this is something you should be thinking about again. You know, it's like how to deconstruct the bass. How to go and put it into a new environment and then perform it. So if you're going to like go and apply this stuff to just using it with really complex basses, then you're going to need to be a little bit more, I guess, clean with it. So you're going to have to select very specific parts that you like, but also have a ton of content to work from. So it's harder when you have like only 4 bars. If you have an hour worth of shit, then you have an hour worth of shit to scroll through. So that's kind of like the whole point, is that when you do an hour worth of samples, that sample will keep giving you new samples for until you're done with it, really, until you're bored of it. So we're gonna bring this baby Reese into the sampler here. And again, like this sample right here, because it has so much movement and a lot of like weird little hits in it, I can use it for a ton of different things. So I've been using this sample for probably 2 years on random shit. It just became part of my sound design, or part of my, like, I guess, sonic identity, because it's something I use in almost every track. Okay, so again, we're going to want to play back at C3. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to find kind of an interesting spot here. And I did make a note about what I'm about to show you here. That's about velocity modulation. We've already talked about this a bit. So using velocity to modulate not just volume. So by default, it will be mapped to volume, and that's going to be right here. So you want to turn that off. And then in the MIDI here, you can use velocity to select sample selector, sample offset. You're going to want to go with sample offset. So now even when I just play it, so we can also offset loop start. Cool thing is that now I can just kind of draw in something and not really worry about it. So let's get a sub in here. And my favorite 808 samples are probably the 808 Warfare. And I believe I gave these out. These are all the same sample. I'm going to go and just take this little transient out of all of them. So that's highlighting all of them, and because there's the same sample, I can edit all of them at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to go and just kind of like have that little line in here, and I can kind of draw in a line. So now I don't have to be kind of like worried about the sub. This is going to be a little bit random. So maybe I want it to kind of be like one of those like weird little trapping hits. Okay, cool. All right, so I can go and kind of like change some of these up now. Oops. Let's make sure. There's a lot of spaces in this sample. It's going to be a little bit hard to isolate and time constraints here, so let's Alright, so that's cool. Like this right here. Let's get that all in one little spot. I'm going to chop them up just a little bit more. Let's make this half as long, and then we'll use some pitch bend here. So the pitch bend is going to also be part of the modulation as well. We're going to add some movement with that. Just want to get this a little bit bigger. And then we can sustain it for one here, and then we can select the sample that we want to use. We can also repitch this one. Then we use pitch bend to move around the sample again. And we are already doing that. I just want to make it a little bit more drastic. Cool thing about a sampler as well, you can change the range. Small and big lasers. So we're going to add in a little bit of space as well. Now we're doing automation with this to make it a little bit different. And this, Lord, that is a lot of noise. So I've used this bass in a bunch of different ways. I've used it as, you know, like a top layer, and then I've also added FM to it the same way I just did it with the sub as well. So there's like literally, you know, endless possibilities I can do this. It's literally based off of the content that you put into it. So there really is no limitation in what you can do with this specific setup. Then we can add some more of the effects that I was doing on the way in as well, which is like vocoding. Right. Okay, so again, a million shits to shit. So now I'm morphing this into kind of a more higher pitched, kind of like hi-fi trap. Ooh, I like that one right there. Down an octave, because at 1 it actually pitched it up, so I put it down to 0.5, which halves the octave of anything coming into it. So again, about sawtooths, and you know, I got sampling sawtooths with FM. You know, because it's like a sync oscillator, again, syncs to that fundamental of the sawtooth because it has both odd and even harmonics. It's going to repitch the sample. The moment you reach over about -5 around there, you're really just going to hear the sawtooth after that. So that becomes more of just like a sawtooth kind of like platform or carrier. So just getting more and more complex. You know, and again, from a sample that I just go and shit out any point in time with any synth, you know, I could also make this sound kind of with some of those other samples as well, like these or whatever. But yeah, you know, all on the fly, didn't really prep too much else besides just this main synth that, you know, this is part of my workflow. So when I sit down to go make a sound, I like to be intentional because it just, you know, helps the session move along. I just like progress, especially because I've worked with people and they've been like, oh, dude, stop sound designing. Like, well, you know, it's what I like to do. It's what makes it fun for me. So I'm going to. So it's like, this is part of my workflow because I like to be able to execute that stuff. I don't want people waiting on me. I want it to be like, oh, I have an idea for a sound. Let me sit down for like 10 to 15 minutes and do it. And when I'm working with people and collabing, I keep a mental note on how long I'm working on a piece and kind of move to that next piece as quick as possible, which is 15 minutes. I set that limit for myself. 15 minutes, move on if it's not a sound design session. If I'm just sitting down to sound design, I don't want any time constraints. I just want to be able to sit down and do it for however long I can until my neck starts to hurt, pretty much from just looking at a screen for too long. Yeah, so we've talked about how to do a bunch of things already, which is FM sample. We made 808. We haven't done lo-fi yet. We haven't done isolation yet. But we've been transforming these samples the whole time and regranulizing them. So the base effects is what I'm doing right now, where I'm running through a vocoder. I love vocoders. I'll run anything through a vocoder. Give me some leave samples, I'll run that through a vocoder, stack it on a clap or whatever. Um, so that's part of my workflow. I like that, so I do that. So you should develop a bunch of little things that you like, plugin wise, sound wise, that you know achieve certain types of sounds. I like Shepherd's tones, which are very much like this when you pull down the bandwidth. It's kind of like an additive crystal bell tone. I like that. Sounds really crazy and uh, just weird. Weird and atonal. Um, but yeah, so a ton of stuff for you to go and take from everything I just talked about in the last hour. Okay, so let's take this now and let's go into a new section here. Whoopsie. Whoopsie. Let's move that over there. I'm gonna just get this. Okay, so we're gonna do some lo-fi based sampling now. And we're gonna do this with we're gonna do it with Siri. We're gonna have Siri write our beat for us. Just kidding. Siri, write me a beat. Okay, what key? F. You've already written that key today. Siri. Okay, so I'm gonna load up some samples here, and then we're gonna load up Iris. Okay, so I have a couple things or a couple kits that I like to go to for this kind of stuff. There's an Ultimate Boom Bap kit. I use a ton of shit. This has a bunch of random little bass clips that are really good. Alright, so that's a really good one right there. So this is a stand-up bass. Alright, so when you're sampling stuff for lo-fi, it's a little bit different because it's all about, you know, capturing some like little vibe. And we'll also get some other samples. Homie Iconic sampled this stuff and use it for a lot of stuff. So we're going to isolate some parts from this and then use it. Cool. So this is recorded off vinyl too, so a ton of like crackle and pop in it. But also it's super low amplitude and very mid-rangey, so that means I got to do some processing in order to get all that out. If you're familiar with my music at all, every lo-fi track, like the Chet Baker flip and a bunch of other flips like the Jaco Pastorius flip as well, those are all made like every single part from the original track, really. The only parts that aren't from that are usually the drums, and that's about it. So I try to make use of most of that just because it's kind of the style, you know, where, you know, you just kind of like repurpose every little part of the track. So, you know, we talked about this with like crate digging and stuff, but we're going to do this specifically for just like low end stuff. Then we're going to go into this bass sampler as well. Okay, so let's listen to this sample. Okay, so we found some sub. It doesn't exist really, but it will. It will. Trust. Okay, so we gotta pretty much isolate this section out of the sound. And so we don't need to do this with phase cancellation anymore. Not for the low end. The low end is really easy to isolate because all you gotta do is use all you got to do is use a low pass. I've been speaking too much. So just like I was saying how vinyl doesn't have very much low end, we're going to have to expand the low end really, really hard. So that means set the time back to 100%. You can even pull it back to 10%, make it pull out the sustain a little bit more. But then also push up the ratio of compression on expansion here, and then make the release shorter so it refires quicker. Sick. All right, so then we can like take this sample again and do the exact opposite to it if we want to sound a little bit uniform with some kind of top sample, and this is getting out of bass sampling now. It's a little bit more just regular sampling. But, you know, high pass this and just kind of like get like a little part out of it. Alright, so I overcompress the lows. I'm hypercompressing the lows. I'm expanding the noise floor of the lows in order to generate that low tone inside of there. You can also use other things like R-bass. If anybody's familiar with this, this is a mono sample. So I could use mono as well, but let's just, yeah, let's actually do this. Okay, so if the look at the spectrum here, what's great about doing this kind of stuff is that it's not going to really change that much because it's one specific sample, although you can do it. All right, so we're around about 50 hertz G, so let's go about there. What I do to kind of control this as well is I go and pull back the intensity as opposed to pushing it, because it's actually shaping that low end and sine injecting. So it's kind of resonating a sine wave into the sound. Okay, so now we got a little hi-fi lo-fi beat. So I resonated and isolated the bass out of this jazz sample. So that was really not present at all before. Still really, really muddy. So what I do is go and scoop. So scooping in this sense, we want to go and do it after the expansion because it's going to go and resonate and bring up stuff again. So you want to go and pretty much cut around 150 is where I can definitely hear it. Put it up one more semitone right here. Burn it. Okay. All right, so last couple things I want to talk about here is, kind of like sampling some other, live bass elements into your tracks. So we got this bass sample here. So what I like to kind of like focus on this kind of stuff is like how long is the sample going to be? Can I go and warp it and stretch it out if I just want one impact? So if I'm going to stretch it out with this, I want to go and do complex. So I can stretch it out now, and I can low pass it, so I take some of the aliasing out of it, and then we can go again, compress, do the thing with the compression. I have one like sub OTT that I use. So very, like lo-fi, and you can definitely jam along with this. Kind of like, especially with kind of more like old school, kind of like, I guess, LA style kind of shit. California. All right, so I mean, it's really simple. It's just really about knowing that you can go and isolate one of these hits and then stretch it out with different algorithms to see how they sound. Texture is going to be polyphonic, tones is monophonic. So choose the one that sounds the best. So I like texture, but I like texture in a kind of like a loop setting, but also filtered down, so it kind of like has a little bit of wobble. Tones is trying to lock onto one pitch, so definitely changes the original pitch of the sample. We can have a little bit of breakup and kind of work with that. Flux is going to randomize that as well. Yeah, weird that you guys are having lag. Sometimes it just does that on Twitch. Just refresh your browser or dump your cache. Twitch takes up a lot of stuff. I'm also running 60 frames, so might be a lot. Also, shape your envelope for the bass sample. So you can have the actual like length that you want. You can even set a loop section here. So like if you're gonna have a loop on something like this, you're definitely gonna want it to be at the end of the sample. Just as any, carryover or whatever, if it ends too abruptly, now it will just hold all the way until your decay. When you're in warping mode inside of simpler, you don't have this function. So let's go and try a different environment. Let's load up isotope iris. And then we'll kind of end off with some polygon today. But hopefully this has been kind of cool for you guys to see some different stuff. And there's a bunch of more stuff we can do with respaces as well. What I showed you today is definitely not the limitation of what you can do with that. And I highly recommend, once you understand this stuff, if you were to go and watch, somebody like Wolg or Cursa or Culprit or any of these neuro sound designers who are both OG as fuck and B, amazingly good, you're going to be able to understand what the hell they're doing, because they're going to be like putting stuff on at different parts of the stage too, and then you're going to be like, oh, is the sausage fattener after the OTT or before? Fuck. So it's like the little things that they do in their workflow to make their sounds get to the level that they want is usually a result of that resampling process that I just did. Because you just go and experiment, you add on new shit, and you're like, wow, that's the one. Or you find a random plugin that does something it kind of shouldn't. And then you just go and abuse that thing. Like there's a bunch of Waves plugins that I use for the input distortion only, like Vitamin. I use Waves Vitamin for a lot of that kind of shit, just for input distortion. Just because it's like made to naturally compress on the way in, so it actually makes a really cool sound. Okay, so let's kind of load in this same like bass sample. And also, if you get Iris, which apparently is on some major sale right now, you can get a bunch of preset waveforms that it comes with, because they do want you to kind of use this as a sampler, or sorry, sample and hold kind of engine. If you haven't, seen my whole expose on this synth, what it is, or sampler rather, it's a spectral sampler. So this is a spectrogram, and it allows you to draw in different parts of the frequency range that you want to hear. And then set a loop. So this is super cool. So, yeah, Waves Vitamin 100. So what I just did here is what I just did there, but, 5 times faster. So I just isolated one harmonic. So this is a bandpass. But really it's a filter bank. So kind of like a vocoder. So I can go and just literally kind of dissect or reverse engineer pieces of this waveform. And if I want, let's go and use our horizontal scroll tool. I can go and add in one harmonic up high. Also, something I really, really like about this is the radius RT, which really, really helps when, trying to get like something that sound pretty real. So I'm going to shift the loop start here, and we can shift that right here. We can trim right here, however we want. Then we got a crossfade tool, just like inside of Simpler. All right, so we also have, same exact functionality. Here we have amp envelope E5 is mapped to amp envelope. So if I want to make it just a quick stab, right here. So we're going to actually get this to be a little bit louder as well. This is my quick loudness thing. I'm sure it's everybody's as well. So erase little parts, make it kind of weird in the spectrum, draw something, and then take away from it. And then also can latch on to different parts of the waveform. So with this lasso tool, I can go and draw little random things, or I can, the magic selection, and we'll go and select parts of the spectrum. So then also the hidden little voice mode up here, make sure it's set to mono. If you want to glide, you have to set to legato mode. So we're going to erase all this stuff in the top end actually. The New York low pass. All right, got some distortion. Super boomy. All right, so super easy to do that. Super easy to go and isolate this little part of the low end here and pretty much make like anything out of this. So if I went and flip this beat and we're at 90, I can slow this down to 87. Let's go drum and bass, obviously. It's like the only other option here. All right, so we're gonna get something that's a little bit more drum bassy. We're just gonna make this really quick. A lot of swing on these hi-hats, shakers. Okay, what I'm demonstrating here is that this is how I do a lot of roller basses. I like to use acoustic stand-up basses for this stuff a lot. I think it was when I was really into Calyx and TB, and really big into hospital records and stuff. So hospital records, very, very much the deep liquid shit, not like Netsky or whatever, which is more big room liquid. I'm not really a fan of that, unfortunately, I guess. Unfortunately. It's not a big Netsky guy person. So it needs a little upbeat swing, and then one turnaround. Yes, so yes to caliber cuts. How did I shift those off the grid like that? Pretty much I just highlight. So you see this little line at the top, highlight like this. Then when we highlight like that, we can command move left or right. Also highlight multiple, and then hold down shift, left or right, trims all. And we can like, so this is how I do a lot of my swing. So if I want some things to lag, push and pull, I'll go and push all of them for that little part of the, pretty much of the groove. So with drum and bass, the groove needs to be very consistent. Same thing with like garage or something like that. We do, actually, let's do like, let's do 69, which is 138. So we do, this is literally just to showcase this different bass style here. This is why I made it kind of like a big thing in the last class, to talk about genre-specific sound design. So when you really, really understand your genre, like if you're fucking living burial every day, then you know exactly what you're looking for when you stumble on a sound. And you're like, that's it, that's the one, and then you stop designing. So then you listen to like other people's music and you're like, huh, how come it's so simple but goes off so hard? Because that person knows the genre, they know how it just affects them, really. So same exact patch, same exact acoustic sample, and I have a stand-up bass here that I use for a lot of stuff, but I just didn't feel like being on stream with my entire stand-up just set up and all this shit. It would be like a whole thing. We're gonna do that for the audio engineering stuff. We're gonna do a lot of recording. But yeah, this is something I really wanted to talk about, just so I do talk about it. I'm not just talking about respaces. It's really easy for me to do like a 4 or 5 hour session just talking about respaces. There's so many different ones, dude. But this is the really like vibey stuff that I can sit down and just like sit down and make a really, really nice beat, and then have some organic sounding samples. So this bass here sounds a little bit murky. You know, it's like if I was listening to it on somebody's track and I'm like, I really like that, I would be thinking, what the fuck is that? You know, because I don't really know where the original sub is coming from. It does have a little bit of breakup. You know, say if I did this so many times that I know exactly what it sounds like when you do stuff like this, then I can go and listen to a sample and be like, this sounds like it filtered down stand-up bass, and that's kind of like where I come from with it, where it's like, because I've lived and breathed bass my entire life and jazz and all that shit. When I hear it in other people's music, I immediately recognize it. I'm like, oh, that's sick. I love the way they did that. Let me just get some Nina Simone, or maybe some Diana Ross. Good to go. So, Dana. So a ton of like cool stuff I talked about today. Again, this guide is a little bit shorter. You need to really understand granular synthesis and all that stuff. We're gonna end off with polygon here, but you know, don't limit yourself to just using simpler, sampler, whatever like that. Again, this is 110 as well, and we're not talking about genre-specific implementation or anything like that. So really, this is just understanding that this is the workflow. So you can say like this is going to be a full track at some point, or you can just design a bunch of sounds, put them in your library, move on to making a track. So if I was going to sit down and make like a garage track or whatever, because I was just feeling like it, had a cool sample that I was working with, you know, I'd start a new session, bring in the sound, you know, and then I can go and like piece that in with like little hits, you know. So say with this garage sample or garage thing I'm doing right now, can try bringing in some of that resample like right here. So this is like phrasing. So being able to understand that you need space in your beat in order to be emotive. You know, you can't write a dubstep track that is neg 4 lefts or neg 2 lefts and expect somebody to like really feel something from it besides hype. You know, that's really all kind of boils down to. So we're gonna use some verb. Just gonna put in a space here. And we're also going to break it down a little bit because it's a little too huge. Might want to kind of move it in from the top, bring it in, and then we'll close it all the way down for the end here. So we got a little phrase going on here. Jesus, stop it. Okay, so let's get a little Diana Ross. Ain't no man high enough? Obviously. Let's get a little Valhalla delay. Val. Okay, and then we can even make this a 4-bar phrase and cut it out for the end here. Even bring in like a full-on resample, like not completely isolated. Let's bring this down for a moment. Cut out everything else here. All right, so this one we're actually going to do some warping. It's a little too squiggly right now. Also, I want to start at the right pitch. So we're going to nudge this. We can hold Option, hit left and right on our arrow keys to scroll through the sample like this. Or we can zoom in, Option, drag the arrow, and also scroll through like this. So you got this little piece too. Okay, so I like this little blip right here, so I'm gonna make that kind of locked to this downbeat a little bit. So I'm not actually looking in my lower window here, I'm looking up here now. And I'm lining it up to the bar 4, or I'm sorry, beat 4, the and of, so the 8th note on beat 4. And then I'm going to have it pitch around, clip, transposition, modulate this. So I want it to pitch down there, and then I want it to really kind of like fuck up this middle part. Alright, so that quick pitch movement creates this like really squiggly thing going on there, so that's kind of cool. So what I want it to do now is I want it to come in from the back and then come up close. So we're going to go and automate some reverb. This is going to be something we're also going to talk about more in processing class, which is the snapshot automation stuff. How to go and automate stuff just for momentary effects. Alright, so I had it the first time, and then I'm going to add another layer of processing on this, and we're just going to add in some resonator. And then, what note am I playing? Alright, we're playing like a G, F. So we're going to go resonate this. I want to resonate it because I like that sound. But again, this is like stuff to make it a little bit more interesting. So ear candy is like 100% how you make really basic vibes very interesting, keep the listener engaged, keep you engaged. It's like I have ADHD, so I need stuff to keep me engaged with what I'm doing, or else it's like boring. So I have to keep myself having fun. And so what I do is I figure out that, the vibe and groove is really what I like to lock onto, and then I like to hear little tiny things in and out. Instead of being like, it needs to change genre 5 times in one drop. I keep on one kind of constraint, and then I go and add to that. Gonna put it down an octave to gonna make it minor, so I'm gonna add some thirds. Very much vibes. very much way more viber. Very much way more vibier. Vibrator. Let's get a little piece right here. So I'm just gonna make an edit. It's like, stop please. Jeez. This fucking computer keyboard is killing me. So I just want to get a little hit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use volume automation or volume modulation, meaning fades. Please do not automate your volume. Automate a utility. So I want this. I'm going to go and right click, add lane for each automation. And we're going to add this, which is the verb. So this is like a really, really scrapey kind of sound. So it's going to sound kind of cool if I run it through the resonator. Yeah, that's some vibes. Like, this is a track now. I'm probably gonna make this into a track. Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff. I know we didn't really talk about polygon as much as I wanted to, which is 0. But we can kind of fit it in here because we do have some time. Yesterday we did go on for 3 hours because there was so many different sounds to talk about. But polygon's super sick. Definitely do not overlook this synth.